Welcome to All Things Equal. I'm Holly Burrow. Today, we're focusing on the support systems that ESOs themselves need to thrive. Who's out there helping the helpers? Behind every successful entrepreneurial ecosystem are the ESOs working hard to build programs, secure resources, and navigate the challenges of entrepreneur support. In this episode, we'll talk candidly about the tools, funding, and collaboration that ESOs need to be truly functional, sustainable, and impactful. Let's dig in.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Candi Block. My current role, I'm the Director of Entrepreneurial Development at EDON, which is our Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. That's a mouthful of a title. It is, yeah. I feel like in our space, there's always so many acronyms as well. So it's like giving the full title right off the bat. So, a little bit about my background. Before I came into this role, I was an entrepreneur myself. So I worked in the wedding space. I had a wedding and events planning business. And then one business wasn't enough, so I started a second one. My husband and I co-owned a yard game rental company together. So it's aligned really well with running events, doing weddings. We worked with a lot of corporate clients with that business. And then two wasn't enough, so I kind of launched and did a side project, which was still in the wedding space, but I started developing like a wedding planning app that couples could use. So kind of over the course of like 6 or so years, I just kind of kept dabbling and my businesses grew. And I went from really being a solo entrepreneur to growing a team, having multiple businesses, kind of stepping a foot into being a startup founder. Like the app was very different building that than like my service-based businesses. And so, yeah, had a lot of irons in the fire. And then the pandemic hit. And that was when I decided to, just changed everything overnight, which it did, for a lot of businesses. And so that's when I actually decided to take a step back from the wedding industry, kind of exit that space. But I still was just fascinated by entrepreneurship. And so I decided to go back to school. I love school. I loved being in school. So I did my master's in sociology, which people always think is strange. Did you? Oh, that always makes me so happy when I hear a lot of people are like, oh, you got an MBA. And I'm like, nope, surprisingly not. I've still never actually taken an official like university business class in my life. I studied sociology, but my focus was still on women in entrepreneurship and what that looks like for female founders, why they start their businesses, what it means to be purpose-driven, how they run their businesses differently. It was just an incredible research project. I love talking with all of the entrepreneurs that were part of that. And then from there, after I finished my program, I was kind of looking for opportunities. I didn't even really know what ecosystem building was at that time, but I just thought if I could spend my days talking to entrepreneurs, I'd be really happy. And then I met our SVP of entrepreneurial development, and he was like, hey, I've got an opportunity for you.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I've landed in this role and now have fully embraced being an ecosystem builder and really love this.
Because I have spent my entire life being an entrepreneur, but this particular business, EQALL, is the first I've ever built in this vertical. Everything I did prior was all food service based. So much like yourself, lots of like businesses that collapse in on each other, like, like the cups that each other. Like I owned a restaurant, but then we also ran a delivery business and we had a food truck that operated under another name and we had a cater company that operated under another name.
Yeah.
I tried to launch a CPG product. I then tried to build an app, like very, very, very similar journey on the other side of the table is how I generally refer to it. And then I sold my last company in 2018. So the universe kind of gave me a pass on the having to figure out food service during COVID. I'm not mad about that.
Yeah, great timing.
But
yeah.
But then kind of made a flip and came on the other side of the table and took a role with a CDFI. And in that position, I was working with business owners. I don't think I've ever loved a job like I loved that job. And it was one of the only times I've ever worked for someone else. In that time, I saw this gap in how organizations were serving entrepreneurs. And so I started doing EQALL because I saw this opportunity to serve entrepreneurs in a different way and support all the organizations that do that work. because what we kept bumping up against was like everybody in all the organizations we partnered with, like wildly passionate, like just like you, like I love doing this, I want to do this, I'm happy to be here, I want to do whatever I can to help, but you're only one person. And so a lot of like where the concept for this came from was how can we help the people like to be able to scale out that ability to care and service the community. And so that's where a lot of our ideas came from for how to do this. Of course, it's different than when it began because, as
It
businesses
always is.
are.
Yeah.
um, so tell me a little bit about as you've gone on this journey and kind of like fully embrace being on the other side of the table, what do you feel like the real impact that ESOs or service communities have on local economies? Like, what do you feel like is the biggest driver there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, entrepreneurship is just so critical to our economies, right? I think this is something that, we work really closely with Right to Start. And, one of the things that we're constantly educating people about, and especially in our role, because we work with I'm part of our economic development authority, is that people always think it's like the big name companies that come in to your community or like are really flashy and that those are the majority of the jobs, but that's really not the case, right? It's actually small businesses. Yeah. 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 And what I love seeing too, I think we're at this really critical point in our culture and society where more people are excited about entrepreneurship, wanting to do something on their own. And for us, we're focused on how do we make that accessible, right? Like, how do we just keep reducing barriers so we get more and more business owners and small to mid-sized businesses and startup founders pursuing those ideas because we don't want people just sitting on an idea and wishing they could do it. So, like, even myself, when I started my wedding planning business, I was just doing it on the side. Like, I would have considered that a side hustle at the time. I had a full time job and I just wanted to get more into events. I thought it was really fun. I was like, really, I didn't even plan to get into weddings. I just wanted to do events. And then I booked a wedding and then it snowballed and all kind of happened so quickly. And so, I think that can be true for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like you have an idea and you have something that you want to try, but you can't always predict like how quickly something
Mm-mm.
might happen. And that's when you really need the resources and the help in those moments. And so, now that I'm on the other side of the table, it's like, how do I meet founders right where they're at, right? Figuring out, are you just getting started? Are you at that point that you need to scale? What do you need to scale? Connecting those dots for them.
When an entrepreneur is in that moment, it is
Mm,
incredibly acute and they need help now. And they
yeah.
don't need theoretical big, like, they don't need to be in a program per se because they might have already bypassed a lot of that. Like, they need whatever real burning problem they need help solving, they need help now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's always very, very urgent. And I think unless you've been an entrepreneur yourself, you don't always understand to what degree the urgency exists because it's like you can see the end of a timeline in front of you and you're like, if I can't make this happen in 3 months, 9 months, whatever it is, the opportunity will evaporate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really so how do you envision ESOs balancing like that structured business education piece of it? Like I kind of mentioned, they don't
Mhm.
always need a program with real
Yeah.
world entrepreneurship experience and one-on-one level. Like how do y'all balance that?
Yeah, yeah. So we always, I think like a lot of ecosystem builders, we try to really sit at that like 30,000 foot level of seeing, okay, what is happening in our region? What programs already exist? What resources are there? But then what's missing? And that is something that is just constantly in flux? So it's like as soon as you feel like you've like really hit the nail on the head and like, started a new offering or brought something else into the community, then all of that will shift. And so it is one of the things that I really love about the work that we do is that it's very dynamic. In our organization, when we're looking at everything happening, I think even right now, we're kind of understanding what is the right blend of really structured content and resources and programs versus just founders being able to come together and socialize. Like, do we just need more happy hours? Like, because there's magic to that. There's magic to the founders, some of the investors, the other ESOs, just coming together in an environment that feels very natural, very easy, and then just let those connections happen and like the brainstorms happen and the new idea that kind of like floats by them. And so it's, it's always that balance that we're trying to strike.
We had this idea that if you bring founders and funders and program leaders and small businesses, so startup founders and small businesses, all into a room together, but then you give them a reason to interact. So what we like our first event we did, we had these Lego kits and every table had a Lego kit and we sorted people like when you came in the room and we had like 150 people at the event and we sorted them like you would get a number when you came in the room and you were meant to not be with your companions that you entered the room with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we were trying to facilitate and ultimately were able to facilitate was like talking organically that didn't feel like a startup networking event where it's like pitch
Yeah.
after pitch after pitch and it's very impersonal, but we were trying to give them something to collaborate on so that they connected around skills and perspectives and what came out of it was so cool. Like that's we did about 6 of them in
Yeah.
total before we were like we can't make this happen because the level of sponsorship we needed to make it happen was really high.
Yeah.
um I mean, as you might imagine, 150 people, that's a lot. But
Yeah.
what we learned from it was so cool about can you create even small scale scenarios where you're bringing people that might otherwise never interact, but it's not a pitch event because a lot of startup spaces are very married to their pitch event. They're fine, they serve their
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah.
but they don't always build relationships. And what we were after is can we kind of turn that a little on its side and help them build relationships? Because if you're fundraising, if you're looking for partnership, any of those things, those don't come off a pitch.
Yeah.
Those are
I bet.
relationships. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know our community, there's kind of like a tolerance threshold of how many pitch events you can really have before people are kind of like, okay, that's too much. I'm a little tired of pitches. Or it just leaves out, like you mentioned, like a huge segment of entrepreneurs that they're like, well, I'm not raising right now. I'm not looking to raise, but I need tons of other support.
so we came up with what we called pitching for connections. And like you're welcome to run away with this if it appeals to you. I'll just put that out there
Love it.
because I didn't come up with it. Our collective group came up with it, and I was like, that's the thing. And so we've made it happen. And it's a 60-second pitch, no deck, no, but teaching them how to do a 60-second pitch, and then they in front of a room and they have a QR code so people can send an email to them because the idea is that we want the room to connect with them. We want them to reach out and be like, I want to connect you to my sister. She should buy your product. I want to connect you to this doctor because they're going to be a great resource for you. Like, we want the room to engage, but it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with money. Like,
Yeah.
because they're not
And that's
ready for that.
amazing. Yeah, and you're also teaching entrepreneurs, like, ask for what you need, not what's just somebody else is telling you that you need. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, I love that idea. I
It's
might
fun.
take that idea. Yeah.
Is how well it works is like because when you invite the community in they're expecting one thing, and when you well this is really cool, oh you mean I'm not just going to sit here for an hour and a half and listen to people pitch again and again. We want them to be engaged, we want them to ask questions, we want them to like
Yeah.
deepen the ask. Somebody says, oh, I need somebody to connect me with a studio where I can produce my work. We want the audience to say, my brother owns a studio. What have you seen and what have you been a part of building that makes an ESO program deeply effective for actually building the small businesses and taking them from one stage to another, no matter what the stage?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, thinking about programming, I mean, we actually started a new initiative this year. We're calling it Bestie, again, acronyms, but it stands for Building Entrepreneurial Support Together Initiative. So, Bestie, yeah. And I mean, what we've kind of done this in different iterations in the past, but what we realize is like we have a team of three. Like we're small. We have a lot of other ESO partners, but we're all very busy, but there's a lot of ideas that founders have of something that they want to start, like a networking, a meetup, like a workshop. And we're like, how can we empower them to do that? It helps provide a lot of opportunities in our community that we don't have to actually do the heavy lifting of like putting it on and marketing it. And so yeah, we've kind of just launched that this year, and we've had a lot of really cool things come out of it that again, we would have never had the capacity to actually just run on our team. So we have, and what's cool too is that I think this is a great way to serve entrepreneurs from different backgrounds as well. We have like a really great organization called She Means Business that's getting started, and they're launching like an 8-month program for female founders that are between like 18 and 24. So like we want to take somebody for their very first business idea and like take them through this program. We have a group doing ski lift pitches where you're like connecting with people on the ski lift, which is super fun. I mean, very unique to our region. I know, right? I was just like, how can we support this? Because I want to attend. Like selfishly,
Yeah,
I
I know.
want
I
to
want to be
attend.
part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like these creative ideas that we probably wouldn't have thought of, but again, other founders are like, this is what I need, or I want to connect with other founders that are in similar industries, similar backgrounds, that they want to find their community. I think that's the biggest thing. And however we can kind of make that happen, that's what we want to do. And usually it's pretty minimal, actually. Like people need a couple $100 to like cover a bar tab or buy pizza or something like that, which as a founder, they're like, I can't really do that. But we can step in and support it. And then again, it's like once the ball is rolling and people find that community, they can really carry the torch on it. So that's been really exciting. Yeah.
With more people that are in this space, and we maybe we
Yeah.
can find a way to help you share that, because
That
I
would be
love
great.
that
Yeah.
idea, because I feel like of us that do this work, we get very focused on I have to do it. Like my team
Mhm.
has to build this resource, but I love that you look
Yeah.
outside of your own team and are just encouraging the community to come to you. That is
Yeah.
magical. I love it
And I
so
mean,
much.
that's a lesson that we've had to learn too. I mean, another big event that we put on in our community is Reno Startup Week. And that one, it's community led, but we've kind of spearheaded it because we held a grant that kind of initially got it off the ground. And it's a lift, right? I mean, for anybody that's planned a startup week or a big conference like knows that it's a lift. And so what we found is that we would get so in the weeds of that event. And then coming off of the event, it would take us time. We had like a recoup. You need to recoup after things like that.
Recover.
And then it's like we would, kind of come back up from air, and we're like, oh, the things have shifted. Like what? Well, we were in the weeds. We were not able to sit high level and see like what else was needed. And so by, empowering others to lead these meetups and networking things, it allows us to keep our head above water and really see, okay, what's going on? Like what does our community really need?
How are you looking at the data that you're using to support your ecosystem? What are you collecting? How are you collecting it? What are you doing with it?
Yeah. Oh man, the data. What? This is always challenging because it's like, how do you measure, I mean, speaking about, yeah, like, how do you measure all of the connections that happen at a networking event? And it's really hard to do, right? Like, we know the magic that's happening when just two people like have a conversation and, we're like, oh, these two people are passionate about something, and you like put them in a room together. But how do you actually quantify that is so hard. We're in a little bit of a unique space. I mean, some of our events we collect really amazing data on, like our startup week event now. We have it started in year one as just kind of having one session happen at a time. It doubled in size from year 1 to 2. It grew in year 3 to the point now where it's really set up to like choose your own adventure. Go pick the sessions. We have multiple sessions happening at a time for 5 days. You know, we're trying to meet the entrepreneurs wherever they might be. So for that, we have really great data. We use an app called Hoova to
Yeah.
put up our session. There's so much that comes from that, which also kind of helps us keep a pulse on then what we can do for the rest of the year. So that's really great. And in our role, sitting as part of our economic development authority, there's other things that we try to track, but are really hard to do as well. We try to keep a pulse on how much funding our startups are getting, how many startups are getting funded, the number of jobs that are being created. But even that can happen so fast. It's difficult to keep a pulse on where, we sit down and talk to a founder and they're like, I have 2 employees. You talk to them 6 months later and they're like, I have 10. And you're like, okay, I know. You're like, great. And also now our report is already out of date, and so we're just constantly, we're that's a, I don't know that anybody has the perfect, if anybody does have the perfect answer, please tell the rest of us. But yeah, we're just trying.
Constant project of E-ship, and he like one of the things he surfaced was that how do you measure hugs? Like because we were trying to understand how might we create some novel ways to collect information and be able to share out the impact that this work is doing. And ultimately where we got was like this is just really really hard. And so we crafted some really kind of strange journeys to try to figure out like are the hugs happening? And is anybody talking about the hugs? And kind of what we ended up
Yeah.
with was some element of tracking when organizations are sharing each other. So, like if you have a small business that meets another small business at your event, so you're the connection, you're the junction point. Are they then going out and talking about that together? Like, are they doing a LinkedIn post, an Instagram post? Be where
Yeah.
one of them or both of them call out, "Oh, I met so and so at this event," and it's like a collective share out. And
Yeah.
what we started doing was trying to figure out how can we encourage those collective share outs from events that were ecosystem facing
Yeah.
to try to like, but it's also very hard to collect.
Yeah.
Like, how do you go and scrape that information? Because some founders will absolutely volunteer it for you.
Yeah.
They'll either tell you about it or they'll tag you in the post or whatever it is. Others, it's really hard. It kind of happens in a vacuum and you may not know it's happening. So that like, but we were really struggling, like how might we figure out how to measure hugs? Like when are
Yeah.
the connections happening?
And sometimes you won't know for a while, like,
A
what
long
the
time.
benefit was, and so it's we can always track attendance at these events and, like, who the companies are and what stage they're at, those types of things, but oftentimes you won't know until a year or 2 later, and then they'll come back and tell you, like, "Oh, that thing that you hosted was really impactful for me, and now look at where I'm at." But we don't always know that in the moment. And so we're trusting it's all gonna happen.
Even if I think about our unique instance, so we just recently entered into work with a partner that we met at a conference 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So was attending that conference worth it? Yes, but could I have told you that immediately? No.
Yeah.
Like, but I know for a fact that that's where I met this person. That's when we started building a relationship, building out their ecosystem and working on some other things. And so like we insta connected where we were like, we like each other. I like what you do, you like what I do. We should be
Yeah.
friends. But
Yeah.
it took 3 years before we had an offer that aligned with what their space needed. So how do you tell the story of 3 years later? I mean, it's a very
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is, I think more so, I mean, yeah. I mean, the data can be so important, but also I feel like we are storytellers to some extent. And so, I feel like being able to show what we're doing and the impact that it's having is oftentimes being able to tell the story of the founder or the entrepreneur and their journey, and then kind of connect our work back to that.
Every program is funded from somewhere. How are you sharing that type of impact with your funders?
Yeah. 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 So we Yeah, we're very fortunate that our work is funded partially through the state. So, EDON is one of 7 or 8 economic development authorities in the state of Nevada. We all sit under our governor's office of economic development. So, about a third of our funding comes from the state. for our whole organization. And entrepreneurial development is kind of one branch of the work that we do. And then the rest of it comes from our major investors, which are other kind of larger companies in our region that believe in our work. They believe that a rising tide will lift all boats. If our economy is growing and growing sustainably, then that supports really everyone. And so about 2/3 of our funding in our organization comes from our major investors. So we actually have a board that we report to. So every month we present to our board, which again is a lot of storytelling. So I am very fortunate. Our SVP of entrepreneurial development, Doug Irwin, he's been doing this work for like 14 years. So he started back when people were like, what is that? Like no one knew what entrepreneurial development was. And he really, really had to like lay that foundation and show like the impact and the importance of this. But we still do that. I mean, we still to this day are like, this is the impact. These are the stories. This is the growth that happens in our region when entrepreneurs are supported. So we report out to our board. We also just have a lot of email newsletters. I feel like that's pretty common. I mean, for our investors, for our community, we've got a monthly newsletter that goes out to really try to share that work. And then we were the first state to establish an office of entrepreneurship through Right to Start. So, especially when we go into our legislative session, we work very closely with them to, again, that's when it all comes into like, okay, what's the funding situation going to be in the future? And, what does this look like? But yeah, I feel like that kind of, it doesn't happen all the time. So more regularly, we're reporting to our board.
It's such complex work. It's complicated, but it's also very complex. And
Yeah.
you're helping build the fabric of the community because as much as you might want to bring in a large company that brings 500 jobs in with it, even if you're doing that, the people that are coming with that company need to want to enjoy living in your community. They need the cafe to have breakfast at. They need a place to get their hair cut. They need all the
Yeah.
other things that I
Yeah.
feel like we don't always fully acknowledge the work that entrepreneurship support does to build a fabric of the community, because without that, it just fades away.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly. Yeah. Well, and even some of the things that end up spinning out from these companies. I mean, we have a startup here locally now that had worked at Panasonic, which, a lot of that work came from our other teams here where we brought in Tesla. And then because Tesla came into our region, we have Panasonic now. But she was working there and realizing like there's just a lot of dust and things that people are breathing in while they're working. And so she branched off and created a startup that now it's like I might be getting this a little bit wrong, but it's like a robot that like cleans up all of that dust and things. So like, and then they can reuse it and it keeps it out of the air. And so we don't, you just, people don't know. They only think, like, okay, this company is coming in the number of jobs, but then you don't know what kind of innovation that's going to spark because of that. And that's all entrepreneurship.
what we were talking about is the bleed that happens when a cornerstone business leaves. So, like if you have a physician that ends up leaving town, it's not just the physician that leaves. It's then your
Yeah.
pharmacist that leaves. It's your physical therapist that leave. It's there's this whole waterfall of activity. So I feel like being cognizant of both that spin up that you just spoke about and the spin down, like
Yeah.
the support of entrepreneurship really makes a huge difference in stopping the bleed out and
Yeah.
encouraging the spin up. And I feel like if you're not aware of it and fostering it,
Yeah.
you're in jeopardy of losing one or the other. That's
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really great point too. And recognizing people come into entrepreneurship in all sorts of different ways, right? Buying an established business from somebody that's looking to leave the region or retire is just as much entrepreneurship as starting something from the ground up or having a brand new idea for something. And so it's really looking at how do we have support for all of those entrepreneurs.
all types of entrepreneurs, but the
I know.
reality of making that happen is
Hmm.
so multifaceted. Like, that's
It is. Yeah. And it takes time. If I could just snap my fingers and be like, oh, this program now exists, we all would.
do you feel like are some of the things that help remove the barriers to building up these businesses? Like, what are some of the things that you've discovered? Like this woman that's wanting to launch a company building robots to remove dust. Like, what could you put in place as a community that helps her not just have the idea and be supported in the ideation, but then actually launch that into something that's a functional business that continues to grow?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's kind of two things that come to mind for me. We've talked a lot already about the connections that entrepreneurs need. I mean, one of our core values on our team is to open doors, right? So if we have a connection that we can make, we're going to make that. And I think that that's a huge piece of being an ecosystem builder is building relationships in your community so that when you are making an introduction to a founder, something actually happens from that, right? And people kind of trust your reputation and who you're supporting and yeah, those introductions go somewhere. So that's a huge piece. But then also, and part of this is more like legislative that we try to tackle, or like what are the barriers? What are the fees? What does the licensing look like? How many permits does somebody need to run a business? And who can we that's not always our area of expertise. And I think that's what can make that the most challenging to tackle as an ecosystem builder. If that is your area of expertise, wow, kudos to you. But for me, even when I was a business owner, it was like,
Yeah.
my business is pretty simple. I do wedding planning, but knowing, okay, where all do I need a business license because I was operating across a really big region and across different counties, and then where are you paying taxes to? And those types of complications are what sometimes keep people from scaling. They're like, well, then I just won't do that. I'll stay smaller or yeah. And so that's another piece too. I'm like, okay, how do we make that simpler? And sometimes it's actually just figuring out like how that information is presented. Like, can we update our systems, our websites, our databases to make that information easier to find and access? Or can we just remove it entirely? Right? Like what is just so old that we've been doing for so long but doesn't make any sense? And how can we eliminate that?
No,
So,
I
and that's a big piece.
Eco Map about some of their new ERM capabilities that like I feel like they're really at the core of trying to figure out the connections, the all of the pieces and elements that interplay that ecosystems need to be able to plug in together. And so I was feeling really the last conversation that we had about it, I was feeling really enthusiastic. It's people are trying to solve the problem. People are trying to understand kind of what it takes to do this work because it is so delightfully multifaceted, where it's like
Yeah,
you have to understand the policy, you have to understand all of the tax regulations, you have to understand how humans interact and how humans interact as a group. And like there are
yeah,
so many elements to ecosystem level work that I'm excited that I'm seeing more and more and more people try to solve the problem and create solutions and create methodologies. And
yeah,
I feel like that's something that's a bit overdue.
yeah,
It just
yeah,
in the world in general is actually trying to solve the problem, not just continue things. Like that's,
yeah. Yeah.
you know,
And and it's hard because I think for a lot of ecosystem builders, we've been entrepreneurs and probably still see ourselves as entrepreneurs. And so we have this like run fast, break things. I think we'd all be like, I'll just overhaul the whole system. And if I could, I would. And like just simplify it. And then you have to really learn how to be a community partner and like understand, okay, well, why do these fees exist? Why is this set up in the way that it is? Because it's that kind of understanding that you're going to make partners with the people instead of fighting against them, and real change can happen. And that's also really challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs and people in this work. It happens slower than you want it to, which can be frustrating.
experiences that we've been serving is we can function as the messy middle. because sometimes there is a required buffer space between like a government entity and an organization that's funded through a side party. Like, we can be the messy middle that helps convey knowledge and share information and foster the partnership. And so I think that's we've had a couple of really unique opportunities to do that. And
Yeah.
it's been really interesting because we get to really dig into like what's happening in the community, and to your point, like why do these fees exist? What
Yeah.
do they actually, is this actually necessary? And we've had a couple of instances where like the city didn't even fully realize that there were things that had become antiquated still baked in. And so simply by someone kind of raising a flag and being like, "Hey, seeing that this doesn't really seem to have an outcome," like
Yeah.
that just happens because these systems are complex and multi-flavored and all the
Yes.
things. And
Yeah.
so it's been that part has been really interesting for us, is to be able to
Yeah.
occasionally serve as like this go-between. It's like, "Hey, there's something over here. It's not
Yeah.
working right."
Yeah. I love that mindset of calling it the messy middle too, right? Like there's something to like understand that and feel like. And a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago too, we had an opportunity to work with CityWorks, which is through the Institute for Justice, and they're amazing. And because you also don't know, I mean, you kind of know how your own ecosystem operates, but they are coming in with this breadth of knowledge of like, this is what really works in other cities, and this is how other cities have been able to change. And so sometimes, I mean, yeah, not being afraid to just bring in the outside experts that really have that knowledge that can move the needle forward is critical. Yeah.
Works has been with them and they have learned things, like it sets the stage for really interesting change, because they're able to come in and share knowledge, share process, and it's yes, they are amazing. I will absolutely second that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, what's next on your horizon? What are y'all working on right now? What's launching? Where are you going?
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, the bestie is kind of the biggest thing. We had kind of more kind of slowly internally rolled it out near the end of the year, and now that we're in 2026, there's kind of a huge push to keep funding more programs, more resources, more networking in the community. And then I feels like we're always gearing up for Startup Week. That's gonna be on the horizon. It never stops. Yeah, yeah, it can't. I mean, we have over like 1,400 people that register for that event. It's quite easily become the largest entrepreneurial event in our state. So, which always surprises people how active the Reno entrepreneurial ecosystem is, because a lot of people think of Nevada and they think of Vegas, and Vegas definitely has a lot of things happening too. But it's pretty exciting to have that many people. We have people fly in. I mean, we have some of our Vegas founders are like, I want to be part of Reno Startup Week, and just our proximity to other major cities. So yeah, so that's super fun as well. But I'm excited to see everything that comes out of Bestie and that initiative. That's kind of our big push. And then we've also joined the America the Entrepreneurial campaign. And so I'm sure you're aware of this one, but with it being the United States 200th startup birthday, there's a campaign that Right to Start is doing called America the Entrepreneurial. So we're a founding partner. Our state has become a founding state. We're getting ourselves established as a founding community, and it's a cool campaign again to raise awareness about how important entrepreneurship is, and a really great avenue for us to tell the stories of our founders here. So we'll be working on that this entire year and kind of weaving it into the work that we're already doing, which is super fun. It is a really great way to have kind of this umbrella campaign going on, just to engage our policymakers, our government officials, and some of our other community members, bringing our ESOs together. It's cool. And it'll be fun to see how this entire campaign unfolds over the year and the traction that they're able to get from it. So we're excited to be part of that too.
To it, I would love to follow up and make sure that we get to follow that story a little bit, because I love the idea.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would love
that's
to share, once we again have more of these programs running, and again, hopefully some data. We'll get some data from it too. I know. And then, yeah, I'd be happy to share. And really, thank you for having me today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for tuning in to All Things Equal. If you're inspired by the stories of ESOs driving economic development, subscribe and join the conversation with us. EQALL, the BSO for ESOs, exists to evolve how entrepreneurship support is designed and delivered. We want to share your impact and learn more about how to amplify your organization's work. Let's keep building communities where entrepreneurship is a catalyst for lasting change.